The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chamber cast long shadows across the curved walls. Ambassador Day Hyan sat alone in the human section, his hands folded on the desk before him. The message had come through 30 minutes ago, and he was still trying to process the words. 200,000 dead. Gone in a matter of hours. The chamber doors opened with a heavy grinding sound. Representatives from 63 different species filed in, their various forms, creating a bizarre parade of scales, fur, feathers, and stranger things. Day Hyan watched them take their seats. Some whispered to each other. Others avoided his eyes entirely. They already knew why they were here. The council speaker, a tall being called Theros from the Pelthian Republic, stood at the central podium. His blue skin seemed to glow under the lights. He cleared his throat, which sounded like wind through metal pipes. We gather today to address the tragic events at the human colony designated Eden 7, Theros began. His voice was careful, measured. Initial reports indicate that Vectari forces conducted orbital bombardment of the colony world, followed by ground operations. Casualties are estimated at the full population of approximately 200,000 individuals. Day Hyan closed his eyes. Hearing the number spoken aloud made it real in a way the text message had not. 200,000 people. Families, children, artists and farmers, and engineers and dreamers. All gone because they had chosen to build homes on a world that the Vectari Empire decided they wanted. The Vectari delegate has requested to speak, Theros continued. He gestured to a section of the chamber where the insectoid forms of the Vectari sat. Their shells gleamed like polished metal, and their multiple eyes reflected the light in unsettling ways. Wrath rose from his seat. He was large even for a Vectari, his carapace decorated with marks that Day Hyan had learned indicated military victories. The ambassador felt his stomach turn as Wrath clicked his way to the speaking floor. The Empire regrets the loss of life, Wrath said, though his tone suggested no regret at all. However, the human colony was established within territory that the Vectari Empire has claimed for 3 centuries. Multiple warnings were issued. The humans ignored these warnings. They encroached on sovereign space. The Empire was forced to defend its territorial rights. Day Hyan's hands tightened into fists beneath the desk. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to stay calm, to not leap from his seat and try to strangle this creature who spoke so casually about the murder of 200,000 people. This is a matter of property and sovereignty, Wrath continued. The Galactic Council has always respected such claims. We expect the same respect to be shown to the Vectari Empire. Theros nodded slowly. Does the human representative wish to respond? Day Hyan stood. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. He could feel their pity, their discomfort, their fear. Most of all, he could feel their unwillingness to act. The Vectari were strong. They had been strong for longer than humanity had known the stars. The Council would offer sympathy, perhaps suggest mediation, but they would do nothing real. Eden 7 was settled 40 years ago, Day Hyan said quietly. It was a barren rock when we arrived. No settlements, no structures, no signs of recent habitation. We followed all council protocols. We filed all the proper claims. We transformed that world into something beautiful. Into home. He paused, looking directly at Wrath. Your empire sent no warnings. Your first communication was bombs falling from the sky. After the bombardment, your soldiers landed. They found survivors in the shelters we had built. They executed them. We have recordings from the few who managed to transmit before they died. I can play them if the Council wishes to hear children begging for their lives. The chamber was silent. Wrath's mandibles clicked irritably. Emotional appeals do not change the facts of territorial law. And what does territorial law say about genocide? Day Hyan asked. About the execution of civilians? About children? Thoreau's raised a hand. The Council understands the human position. We also understand the Vectari position. This matter requires careful deliberation. We suggest a committee be formed to investigate the territorial claims and determine appropriate responses. Dae-Hyan felt something cold settle into his chest. A committee. Careful deliberation. He had been a diplomat long enough to know what that meant. It meant nothing would happen. The Council would talk and debate and issue reports. And in 6 months or a year, they would suggest that humanity pay the Vectari compensation for the territory and consider the matter closed. I see, Dae-Hyan said softly. He gathered his tablet and papers with slow, deliberate movements. The Council has made its position clear. The Rose looked relieved. We appreciate your understanding, Ambassador. This is a difficult situation for all involved, but through dialogue in proper channels, we can— I was not finished, Dae-Hyan interrupted. His voice was still quiet, but something in it made Thoreau stop talking. The Council has made its position clear. Humanity will remember this day. We will remember that when our people were murdered, the galaxy offered us committees and careful deliberation. We will remember that justice, it seems, is only for those strong enough to demand it. He walked toward the chamber exit. Representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some called out, asking him to return, to give the Council a chance to address the situation properly. Dae-Hyan did not look back. In orbit above the Council world, Fleet Admiral Yuna sat in her private quarters aboard Sol Station. The walls were bare metal, decorated only with a single photograph. Her younger brother Tae-Min smiled from the frame, his arm around his wife, their 3 children laughing at something beyond the camera's view. The photo had been taken on Eden 7 2 months ago. The communication terminal chimed. Dae-Hyan's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, old. He was only 53, but at this moment he could have been 100. They're doing nothing, he said without preamble. Yuna nodded slowly. She had expected this. Hoped against it, but expected it. I understand. The families deserve justice. They do. Dae-Hyan was quiet for a moment. I can't authorize what comes next. Not officially. But I won't try to stop it either. I know, Yuna said. This isn't your decision to make anymore. It's mine. After Dae-Hyan disconnected, Yuna sat alone in the silence. She looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she opened a secure channel to facilities that officially did not exist, to ships that were not in any registry, to weapons that the galaxy believed humanity could not build. This is Fleet Admiral Yuna, she said into the encrypted channel. Execute protocol revelation. Let them see what we really are. Let them understand what it means to make humanity bleed. On Earth, in hidden bases on Mars, in secret shipyards beyond the outer planets, lights began to glow. Systems that had waited 50 years for activation hummed to life. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council with a smile and open hands. But behind that smile, they had been preparing for this day. The day when they would learn if the galaxy respected anything other than strength, that the Vectari Empire had just provided the answer. Now they would face the consequences. 50 years ago, humanity had made first contact with alien life. Commander Tae-Sung, who would later become Admiral Yuna's grandfather, had been on the bridge of the exploration vessel Magellan when the Pelthian ship appeared. He remembered how the crew had frozen, hardly believing what they were seeing. A vessel larger than anything humans had built, covered in symbols that looked like art as much as writing. The Pelthians had been friendly, almost aggressively friendly, the way adults are friendly to children. They smiled with their strange mouths and spoke slowly through their translation devices. They offered gifts and knowledge and membership in something called the Galactic Council. They explained that humanity was very lucky to have been discovered by them rather than by some of the less pleasant species in the galaxy. What the Pelthians did not know was that human ships had been detecting their transmissions for 8 months before the Magellan encountered them. Earth's intelligence agencies had intercepted communications, studied the languages, begun to decode the technology. They had learned a great deal about the Pelthians and the galaxy they lived in before Commander Tae-Sung ever shook hands with an alien diplomat. They learned that the galaxy was old. So old that most species had forgotten what real war looked like. Conflicts were settled through economic pressure, political maneuvering, and occasional small-scale military actions. The last major war had been 3 centuries ago, and it had lasted only 4 months before both sides agreed to mediation. They learned that the species with the strongest militaries kept them mostly for show. Wars were expensive and disruptive to trade. It was easier to intimidate weaker species into compliance than to actually fight them. The galaxy had become comfortable, complacent. They had stopped innovating in military technology because there was no need to innovate. And they learned that humanity, by galactic standards, was considered weak. Human ships were slow. Human weapons were primitive. Human bodies were fragile compared to most species. The Pelthians and others, like them, saw humanity as a curiosity, a new client species to be guided and protected, and eventually exploited. Commander Tae-Sung had sent a coded message back to Earth after that first week with the Pelthians. "They think we're helpless," he wrote. "We should let them keep thinking that." The decision had been made at the highest levels of every major government on Earth. Humanity would join the Galactic Council. They would smile and nod and play the role of the grateful newcomers. They would trade and learn and participate in galactic society. But they would also prepare for the day when someone decided to take advantage of their perceived weakness. The project was given a simple name: Ghost, as in humanity's real military. Strength would be invisible until the moment it was needed. Dr. Haywan had joined the Ghost project 15 years ago, fresh out of university with degrees in physics and engineering. Now she was one of its senior directors, overseeing the construction of weapons and ships that, according to galactic science, should be impossible. She stood in the command center of Facility 7, hidden in a system so far from established trade routes that no council ship would ever accidentally find it. Through the observation windows, she could see the construction bays, hundreds of them stretching away into the distance, each containing a warship in various stages of completion. "Status report," she said to her assistant, a young man named Kijun. "Final activations are at 82%. Kijun replied, reading from his tablet. "The stealth ships are ready to deploy. Weapon systems are online. AI combat networks are synchronized. We're ahead of schedule, actually." "Hey," one nodded. They had known this day would come eventually. The galaxy always tested the weak. They had just hoped for more time, more preparation. But the massacre at Eden 7 had changed everything. "What about the main fleet?" she asked. "Still in construction, but we have enough operational ships for the immediate response. 3,000 stealth frigates, 500 carriers, 200 battleships. The Admiral says it's more than enough for what she has planned." "Hey," one looked at the ships through the window. Each one represented years of work, billions in resources, and technology that would terrify the Galactic Council if they knew it existed. Humans had taken what they learned from alien technology and improved it. They had asked questions that the galaxy had stopped asking centuries ago. They had innovated in ways that comfortable, complacent civilizations no longer bothered to innovate. The stealth systems alone would change everything. Galactic sensors relied on technology that had not been updated in decades. Human scientists had found 3 different ways to render ships completely invisible to those sensors. The weapon systems used principles of physics that most council species had dismissed as impractical. The AI networks operated at speeds that would overwhelm any known defensive computer. On paper, humanity should not be able to build any of this. But humans had never been very good at accepting what they should not be able to do. Captain Ji Woo stood on the bridge of the Silent Dawn, watching her crew run through final system checks. Her ship was a stealth carrier, capable of launching 200 fighter craft while remaining invisible to every scanner the galaxy had. It could operate inside enemy territory for months without being detected. It could strike and vanish before anyone realized it had been there. She had trained for this her entire career. 20 years in the Ghost Fleet, participating in exercises and simulations, always knowing that this moment would eventually come. The moment when humanity stopped pretending to be weak. "All stations report ready, Captain," her first officer said. His name was Sung Ho, and he had been with her for 5 years. She trusted him completely. "Very good," Gu said calmly. "Navigation, set course for Vectari space. Stealth systems to maximum. We go weapons dark until the Admiral gives the word." The Silent Dawn began to move, its engines producing no detectable signature. Around it, 100 other ships did the same. They slipped away from their hidden bases like shadows, heading toward a target that did not know they were coming. The Vectari Empire controlled 14 systems. Their homeworld, Vector Prime, held 6 billion citizens. Their military numbered over 2 million soldiers and operated 1,500 warships. By galactic standards, they were a major power. They had conquered smaller species. They had intimidated others into submission. They believed themselves untouchable. They had no idea that humanity had spent 50 years studying them, learning their technology, mapping their systems, identifying every military base, every weapons factory, every command center. Human intelligence had infiltrated their communications networks years ago. Humanity knew things about the Vectari Empire that most Vectari citizens did not know. And now that intelligence would be put to use. "Admiral," Yuna reviewed the tactical displays one last time. Red dots represented Vectari military targets. Blue dots were human ships moving into position. The operation had been planned down to the second. Every ship knew exactly where to be and when. Every weapon knew its target. Every pilot knew their mission. She thought about her brother, about his children, about the 200,000 people who had been going about their lives on Eden 7 when the bomb started falling. They had deserved justice. The Galactic Council had refused to provide it, so humanity would provide its own justice. "All ships report in position, Admiral," her communications officer reported. Yuna took a deep breath. "Send the signal. Execute Revelation Protocol. Show the galaxy what humanity really is." Across 14 star systems, human ships dropped their stealth. They appeared simultaneously above every major Vectari world, every military installation, every strategic target. Thousands of vessels materializing out of nothing, surrounding an empire that had thought itself safe. The galaxy's comfortable assumptions about humanity died in that moment. And the Vectari Empire was about to learn what happened when you made humanity bleed. Emperor Vex stood in the grand hall of his palace, accepting the congratulations of his military commanders. The conquest of Eden 7 had been perfectly executed, they told him. The human colony had been eliminated with minimal cost to Vectari forces. The message had been sent to the galaxy. Vectari territory was sacred, and trespassers would face annihilation. The hall was filled with displays showing captured human artifacts. Pieces of buildings, personal belongings, fragments of the lives that had existed on Eden 7. Vex's people walked among them, clicking their mandibles in satisfaction. This is what happened to those who did not respect the Empire. The humans lodged a protest with the Council, one commander reported. But the Council took no action. They understand that we were within our rights. Vex clipped his approval. The humans are weak. They will complain and posture, but they will do nothing. They lack the strength to challenge us. In the cities of Vector Prime below, 6 billion Vectari citizens continued their daily lives. They worked and ate and raised their young, comfortable in the knowledge that their empire protected them. Some had heard about the destruction of the human colony. Most did not care. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, barely worth noticing. The Empire dealt with such matters all the time. The sensor stations orbiting Vector Prime detected nothing unusual. Their operators monitored the standard traffic patterns, watching cargo ships come and go, tracking the military patrols that kept the system secure. Everything was normal. Everything was safe. And the sky changed. The first thing the operators noticed was that every sensor in the system went momentarily dark, as if something had interfered with them. When they came back online 3 seconds later, the displays were full of red warning indicators. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands of them, appearing simultaneously throughout the entire system, in orbit around planets, near military stations, surrounding everything the Vectari considered important. But that was impossible. Their sensors would have detected approaching fleets days in advance. Nothing could hide from Vectari detection systems. Nothing could coordinate such a massive appearance across such vast distances. The humans had just demonstrated that both assumptions were wrong. On the bridge of the Silent Dawn, Captain Jiwoo watched her tactical display with satisfaction. Every human ship had dropped stealth at the exact same moment. The Vectari's sensors were probably melting from the sudden overload of targets. Their command structure was likely in chaos. Trying to understand what they were seeing. Receiving Admiral's broadcast, her communications officer reported, Admiral Yuna's voice filled every channel, broadcasting on every frequency the Vectari Empire used. She spoke in perfect Vectari, ensuring there would be no misunderstanding. This is Fleet Admiral Yuna of the Human Defense Forces. 10 days ago, your military attacked the human colony on Eden 7. You killed 200,000 civilians. You executed children. You believed there would be no consequences because the Galactic Council chose to do nothing. She paused. The Council may accept such crimes. Humanity does not. We are here to deliver justice. The Vectari military scrambled to respond. Alarm klaxons wailed across every base, every ship, every defensive installation. Commanders shouted orders. Ships began to move into defensive formations. Weapons powered up. The Empire prepared to defend itself against this impossible threat. The humans fired first. The strike was surgical. Human ships unleashed weapons that cut through Vectari shields like they were paper. Targeting systems identified military installations with perfect accuracy. Missiles that moved faster than anything in the galactic arsenals streaked toward their targets. Energy weapons that operated on principles Vectari had never encountered burned through armor that had withstood conventional attacks for decades. A military command station in orbit around. Vector Prime exploded into fragments. A weapons factory on the third moon erupted in a ball of fire. A naval shipyard where Vectari warships had been built for centuries became a cloud of debris. All in the first 10 seconds. But even as they struck, the human forces were broadcasting evacuation warnings. Every civilian facility received alerts in their local language, giving them minutes to flee before the attack arrived. Every strike was calculated to minimize non-military casualties. The humans were demonstrating overwhelming force while showing a restraint the Vectari had never offered to Eden-7. The Vectari military tried to fight back. Their warships engaged the human fleet, firing with everything they had. For a moment, some commanders felt hope. They were landing hits. Human shields were taking damage. Some human ships were even destroyed. Then they realized the truth. The humans were letting them fight. They were measuring Vectari capabilities, testing their weapons, gathering data. The few human ships that fell were acceptable losses in exchange for learning everything about how the Vectari fought. Once the humans had seen enough, the real attack began. Human fighters swarmed from carrier ships, moving in coordinated formations that seemed to act as a single organism. Their AI-assisted combat networks processed information and adjusted tactics faster than any biological mind could follow. They overwhelmed Vectari defense systems through sheer speed and precision. Captain Ji Wu's carrier launched its full complement. 200 fighters streamed from the Silent Dawn, each one piloted by an officer who had trained for years in simulators that exactly matched Vectari capabilities. They knew every weakness in Vectari ships because humanity had studied those ships for half a century. A Vectari battleship, the pride of their fleet, tried to engage the fighter swarm. The battleship's commander watched in disbelief as his weapons could not track the human craft. They moved too fast, changed direction too quickly, coordinated their attacks too perfectly. His ship's shields failed under concentrated fire from 6 directions at once. His engines exploded. His ship began to break apart. He sent a message before the end. How is this possible? No one had an answer. Across the Vectari Empire, the pattern repeated. Every military installation was hit simultaneously. Every warship found itself outmatched. The humans had positioned their forces so that the Vectari could not concentrate their defenses. They struck everywhere at once, and the Empire's military collapsed like a house made of sand. Emperor Vex watched the reports flooding into his palace command center. His mandibles clicked in panic as he saw his military being dismantled. How many ships do the humans have? He demanded. Our estimates are over 4,000 combat vessels, his military advisor responded, his voice shaking. We don't know where they came from. They're using technology we've never seen. Our weapons are barely effective against them. That's impossible. The humans joined the Council 50 years ago. They were barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Apparently, they lied. About everything. The palace shook as explosions rocked the city outside. Vex looked at the displays showing human forces landing on Vector Prime itself. Not to attack civilians, but to secure government and military facilities. They were taking control of his capital world with a precision that suggested they had planned this operation down to the last detail. Prepare my escape ship, Vex ordered. We must evacuate before. The doors to the command center burst open. Vex spun around to see human soldiers entering, their weapons raised. They wore armor unlike anything he had seen, covered in systems that his guards' weapons could not penetrate. The guards fired anyway. The human soldiers' shields absorbed the shots easily. The lead soldier stepped forward. His helmet retracted, revealing a human face. I am Commander Dongjun of the Human Marines. Emperor Vex, you are under arrest for war crimes against humanity. Vex tried to run. He made it 3 steps before a stun weapon dropped him to the floor. As his consciousness faded, he heard the human commander speaking into his communication device. Admiral Yuna, the Emperor is secured. All primary targets are in our control. Vectari military capacity is at 12% and falling. Civilian casualties are minimal. Operation Revelation is proceeding as planned. 6 hours after the human fleet appeared, the Vectari Empire had effectively ceased to exist as a military power. Their ships were destroyed or captured. Their bases were under human control. Their government was in custody. And across the galaxy, species that had thought they understood humanity's place in the cosmic order were reevaluating everything they believed. The Galactic Council. which had dismissed humanity's complaint about Eden 7, now watched in stunned silence, as the humans demonstrated exactly what happened when you mistook patience for weakness. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. Representatives screamed at each other across the chamber. Some demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others argued for negotiation. A few species, particularly those who had suffered under Vectari aggression, quietly celebrated what they had witnessed. Speaker Thoreaus stood at the central podium, trying and failing to restore order. His blue skin had taken on a pale shade that indicated stress. He had been speaker for 30 years, guiding the council through trade disputes and minor territorial conflicts. Nothing had prepared him for this. The humans have violated every principle of galactic law, shouted the Torvani representative, a being covered in scales that shifted colors with his emotions. They conducted military operations without council authorization. They overthrew a sovereign government. This cannot stand. The Vectari committed genocide, countered the representative from the Mirren Collective, a species that had nearly been conquered by the Vectari decades ago. Where was the council then? Where was galactic law when civilians were being murdered? The chamber descended into chaos again. Thoreaus activated the noise suppression system, which created a field of silence that forced everyone to stop shouting. When he deactivated it, the chamber was quiet, though angry stares were exchanged across species boundaries. The human ambassador has requested to address the council, Thoreaus announced. Given the circumstances, we have agreed to hear him. The chamber doors opened. Ambassador De Hyan entered, but he was not alone. Admiral Una walked beside him, dressed in the full military uniform of the Human Defense Forces. The uniform was dark blue, with silver insignia that glinted under the chamber lights. She wore medals that no one in the council had known humans possessed. Awards for campaigns that had never been mentioned. Symbols of a military that was not supposed to exist. The sight of her silenced even the most vocal council members. This was not the powerless species they had pitied. This was something else entirely. De Hyan and Una took their positions at the human platform. De Hyan activated his speaking channel, and his voice filled the chamber. Members of the council, 10 days ago I stood in this chamber and asked for justice. I described the massacre at Eden 7. I explained that 200,000 civilians had been murdered by Vectari forces. I requested that the council take action. He paused, looking around the chamber. You formed a committee. You suggested dialogue. You recommended patience. In other words, you did nothing. Thoreaus began to respond, but De Hyan continued. So humanity provided its own justice. We dismantled the Vectari military. We arrested those responsible for war crimes. We did in 6 hours what the council claimed would take months of careful deliberation. You had no authority. The Torvani representative shouted. The council governs galactic affairs. Does it? De Hyan asked. His voice was calm, but sharp. The council knew about Vectari atrocities for decades. How many species did they conquer while the council watched? How many times did they cross boundaries that galactic law supposedly protected? And what did the council do? Nothing. Because the Vectari were strong, and the council only enforces laws when it is convenient. Admiral Una stepped forward. She pressed a control on her wrist device, and the chamber's main display activated. It showed data, recordings, communications, 50 years of intelligence that humanity had gathered while pretending to be the weak newcomers. We have been watching you, Una said. Her voice was steady and cold. We monitored your communications. We studied your history. We learned how the council really works. We know about the bribes the Pelphian Republic offers to secure favorable trade agreements. We know about the Torvani slavery operations that the Council conveniently ignores. We know which species pay for protection and which are left to fend for themselves. The chamber erupted again. Representatives demanded to know how humanity had accessed classified information. Others denied the accusations. Some sat in stunned silence as they realized the implications. Yuna continued, speaking over the noise. We also know your military capabilities. All of them. We have studied every ship, every weapon, every defensive system. We know exactly how much force the Council can actually project. And we know it is not enough to threaten humanity if we choose not to comply. The chamber went silent at that. It was one thing to suspect that the humans had become powerful. It was another to hear them state plainly that they could resist the entire Council if necessary. Are you threatening us? The Rose asked quietly. Daehyun shook his head. We are offering a choice. The Council can continue as it has been, allowing the strong to prey upon the weak while pretending to uphold justice. In that case, humanity will no longer pretend to respect the Council's authority. We will protect ourselves and our interests, and the Council can try to stop us if it wishes. He let that sink in before continuing. Or the Council can actually become what it claims to be, a force for justice, a protector of all species, not just the powerful ones, a body that enforces laws fairly, regardless of who is involved. And humanity will decide what is fair? The Pelthian counselor, a female named Mira, asked. She was old by Pelthian standards, her blue skin marked with the patterns of age. Unlike many others in the chamber, she did not sound angry. She sounded curious. No, Daehyun replied. Fair is not complicated. Fair is that war crimes are prosecuted. Fair is that territorial claims require actual occupation and use, not just historical declarations. Fair is that species cannot be conquered or enslaved while the Council watches. Fair is that when civilians are murdered, there are consequences. Yuna pulled up more data on the display. We are making the evidence of Vectari crimes public. All of it. Every attack they conducted, every species they oppressed, every time they crossed boundaries that should have triggered Council action. The galaxy will see what you allowed to happen. They will make their own judgments about whether the Council serves its purpose. The threat was clear. If the Council did not reform, humanity would make sure everyone knew why. Species that had trusted the Council to protect them would learn that their trust had been misplaced. The entire system that had governed the galaxy for centuries would lose its legitimacy. Counselor Mira spoke again. What do you want from us? Daehyun's response was direct. Reform. Real reform. War crimes trials for the Vectari leadership, conducted fairly and publicly. Protections for weaker species that are actually enforced. An end to the corruption that has made the Council a tool of the powerful rather than a guardian of justice. And if we refuse? The Torvani representative asked. Admiral Yuna smiled. It was not a warm expression. Then humanity will enforce these principles ourselves. We will protect species that cannot protect themselves. We will prosecute war criminals. We will ensure that the galaxy operates by the rules the Council claims to uphold but ignores. With or without the Council's permission, you cannot police the entire galaxy. Someone shouted. No, Yuna agreed. But we can police enough of it. And once we demonstrate that justice is possible, other species will demand it from their own leaders. The Council will become irrelevant if it cannot adapt. The chamber dissolved into urgent discussions. Species representatives spoke with their advisors, calculating what this meant for them. Some saw opportunity. Others saw threat. All of them recognized that the galaxy had changed in fundamental ways. Thoreau's called for order. When the chamber quieted, he looked at Daehyun and Yuna with an expression that might have been respect or might have been fear. The Council will deliberate on these proposals. But I must ask, How do we know that humanity will not simply replace the Vectari as the galaxy's bullies? You have shown us your strength. How do we know you will not abuse it? Daehyun gestured to the display showing the aftermath of the Vectari operation. Look at the casualty reports. We destroyed their military completely. We could have glassed their planets. We could have killed billions in revenge for Eden 7. Instead, we targeted only military and government facilities. We gave evacuation warnings. We minimized civilian deaths. We showed restraint even when we had every reason to be merciless. He looked around the chamber. We are strong enough to be kind, strong enough to be just, strong enough that we do not need to rule through fear. That is how you know. Because we could have destroyed you all by now, if that was our goal. Instead, we are asking you to be better, to actually live up to the principles you claim to represent. Admiral Yuna added one final point. The choice is yours. Work with us to create a just galaxy, or watch as we create one without you. Either way, the days of allowing the powerful to prey upon the weak are over. Humanity will ensure that. They left the chamber together. Behind them, the Council began the difficult process of deciding whether to evolve or become obsolete. For the first time in centuries, galactic law would be enforced not through committees and careful deliberation, but through the credible threat of consequences. The humans had changed everything. Now the galaxy would have to change with them, or be left behind. 6 months had passed since the human fleet appeared over Vector Prime. The galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Vectari Empire no longer existed. Its territory had been divided among the species it had oppressed, with human peacekeeping forces overseeing the transition. Former Vectari colonies were becoming independent nations, some for the first time in centuries. In the redesigned council chamber, the trial of Emperor Vex continued into its 3rd month. It was the first war crimes tribunal the galaxy had seen in over 400 years. Representatives from dozens of species presented evidence of Vectari atrocities. Survivors testified about the horrors they had endured. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring that everyone could see justice being done. Vex sat in his containment field, his mandibles clicking nervously as witness after witness described the crimes committed under his rule. He had tried arguing that he was only defending Vectari interests, that he was following historical precedent, that other empires had done worse. The judges, selected from neutral species and overseen by human legal experts, had rejected every excuse. Ambassador Daehyun watched the proceedings from the diplomatic gallery. Next to him sat his assistant, a young woman named Nari, who had joined the embassy staff just before the Eden 7 massacre. She had worked tirelessly over the past months to help coordinate the council reforms. "Do you think the verdict will stand?" Nari asked quietly. Some species are still arguing that this sets a dangerous precedent. Daehyun nodded. It does set a precedent. That is exactly the point. For too long, powerful species believed they could act without consequences. This trial proves otherwise. Vex will be convicted because the evidence is overwhelming, and every other leader in the galaxy will know that they are not above the law. Below them, the prosecution presented testimony from Eden 7 survivors. A few dozen had been off-world when the attack came. Now they told their stories, describing the families they had lost. The judges listened carefully, their expressions grave. The council itself had undergone massive changes. Speaker Thoreaus had resigned, admitting that he had allowed corruption to flourish under his watch. The new speaker was Councillor Myra from the Pelthian Republic. She had surprised everyone by supporting the human reform proposals completely. In her acceptance speech, she had something that became famous across the galaxy. We cannot claim to be civilized while we ignore atrocities. Humanity has reminded us what true civilization requires. Under the new system, Species could no longer buy influence. Council seats were merit-based, with regular reviews to ensure representatives actually served galactic interests. A permanent enforcement division had been established, led by human officers, but including members from 40 different species. This division had authority to investigate crimes and deploy forces without waiting for committee approvals. Some powerful species had resisted these changes. The Torvani clans, whose secret slavery operations had been exposed by human intelligence, had withdrawn from the council entirely. They threatened to form their own alliance to resist what they called human imperialism. So far, they had found few willing partners. Most species recognized that the old way of doing things had been broken. The humans had simply been the ones to finally break it. Admiral Yuna stood in the observation deck of Sol Station, looking out at the flow of ships passing through human space. The traffic had increased dramatically since the council reforms. Species that had avoided human territory now came freely, seeking trade and diplomatic ties. Some came seeking protection, hoping that human forces would defend them if they were threatened. She approved some of these requests. Others she denied. Humanity could not protect everyone, and she would not allow other species to become dependent on human military power. The goal was not to create an empire, but to establish a system where all species could defend themselves and seek justice when wronged. Captain Ji Woo's ship, the Silent Dawn, had been assigned to peacekeeping duties in former Vectari space. She spent her days mediating disputes between former colonies, stopping pirate raiders who thought the power vacuum could be exploited, and showing the flag to remind everyone that human forces were watching. It was different from the intense combat of the Vectari operation, but in some ways more important. She had received a message from one of the colonies last week. They were naming their new capital city after the human ship that had liberated them. Ji Woo had been uncomfortable with the honor. She wrote back suggesting they name it something from their own history instead. They compromised, using a name that meant New Dawn in their language. Close enough. Dr. Hei-1 had returned to her research facilities, but her work had changed direction. Instead of building weapons in secret, she now led programs to share certain technologies with allied species. Not military technology, but medical advances, agricultural improvements, educational tools. The same innovation that had created the Ghost Fleet was now being used to improve lives across the galaxy. She worked with scientists from 30 different species, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded by the powerful for too long. Some council members had protested, arguing that humans were disrupting the technological balance. Hei-1 had replied that if your power depends on keeping others weak, then you deserve to lose that power. Ambassador Daehyun received a notification on his tablet. 3 new species had applied for council membership. All 3 were small civilizations that had previously been intimidated from joining by larger neighbors. Now they felt safe enough to participate in galactic politics. He smiled as he read their applications. This was what the reforms were meant to achieve. Nari joined him at the observation rail, carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed him one and looked out at the council plaza below. There are rumors, she said carefully, that some species are forming a coalition. They say humanity has too much influence now, that we are deciding too much for everyone else. Daehyun sipped his tea, considering his response. The rumors are true. There are species who preferred the old system because it benefited them. They will push back. Some may even try to challenge us militarily. Are you worried? Should I be? He gestured at the plaza, where representatives from 63 species worked together on shared problems. Look at what we have built here. Real cooperation. Real justice. Species that hated each other for centuries are now working side by side. Some will resist, yes, but most are choosing to embrace this new galaxy. He paused, thinking about the past months. We showed them our strength at Vector Prime, But what we show them every day after is more important. We prove that strength can be used justly. That power does not require cruelty. That the strong can protect the weak without exploiting them. Nari smiled. My mother always said that humanity's greatest strength was not our technology or our military. It was our stubbornness. Our refusal to accept that things must be a certain way just because they have always been that way. Your mother was wise. In the trial chamber, the judges returned from their deliberation. The verdict was unanimous. Emperor Vex was guilty on all counts. He would spend the rest of his life in detention, and his empire would never be restored. The courtroom erupted in reactions, some cheering, others silent. Justice, when it finally comes after being delayed for so long, is a powerful thing. Admiral Yuna received a message from her intelligence division. The Torvani clans were indeed building a coalition, gathering species who resented human influence. The coalition had perhaps 12 members so far, small nations and former powers who saw their authority diminishing under the new system. They were talking about military action, testing whether humanity would actually fight to defend the reforms. She sent back her response. Monitor, but do not engage. Let them gather. Let them plan. When they are ready to test us, we will demonstrate again why challenging humanity is a mistake. And then we will offer them a place in the new galaxy, because we are strong enough to be merciful, even to those who oppose us. Captain Ji Woo received similar intelligence reports. Her crew prepared for the possibility of conflict, running combat drills and checking weapon systems. But she also continued her peacekeeping duties, helping former enemies learn to live as neighbors. War was always possible, but peace was worth working for every single day. Ambassador Dehayan stood before the full council, presenting the human proposal for a joint exploration program. Instead of each species exploring alone, they would pool resources to discover and make contact with new civilizations. These new species would be welcomed into a galaxy that actually protected its members, not one that exploited them. We proved we can fight, he told the assembled representatives. Now we must prove we can build. The galaxy is vast. There are countless species we have not yet met. When we find them, let us greet them with the best of what we can be. Let us show them a civilization that values justice and protects its members. Let us create something worth defending. The vote passed with strong support. The exploration program would launch within the year. Human ships would sail alongside vessels from dozens of species, carrying a message of cooperation rather than conquest. Nari asked the question that had been on her mind since the beginning. Do you think we did the right thing? Revealing ourselves this way. Some people say we should have stayed hidden, that we have painted a target on ourselves. Dehayan looked at her seriously. We did paint a target on ourselves, but we also showed the galaxy exactly what happens when someone aims at that target. The Vectari thought we were weak. They learned otherwise. Others will learn the same lesson if they must. He gestured to the council chamber, where species that had been enemies were now allies, where justice was being enforced, where the weak no longer lived in fear of the strong. This is what we did right. We showed the galaxy that another way is possible, that strength and justice can exist together, that the powerful can choose to be protectors rather than predators. Admiral Yuna sent a message to all human forces, a reminder of their purpose. We are not conquerors. We are not rulers. We are defenders of a principle, that every species has the right to exist without fear, that justice applies to everyone, that the strong have a duty to protect rather than exploit. Remember this in every action you take. We are building a galaxy where our children can live safely among the stars. 6 months after humanity revealed its true strength, the galaxy was still adjusting. Some species embraced the changes. Others resisted. Conflicts would come. Challenges would arise. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had a chance to be something better than it had been not, and humanity would ensure the chance was not wasted. Not through conquest or domination, but through the simple demonstration that justice backed by strength could transform everything. The Council had been speechless when humanity showed its power. Now they worked alongside humanity to build something worth that. Power defending. The question was no longer who dared attack humanity. The question was whether the galaxy could learn to match the standard humanity had set. Time would tell. But for now, hope was spreading across the stars, carried by ships that had once been hidden, but now flew openly, protecting a dream of what civilization could become.